Megan Fenyo presents I Am Enough TV. Be your best self. Awaken the power within you. Transform your life completely through the power of ultimately believing you are enough. Hey everyone, welcome to I Am Enough TV. I am your host, Megan Fenyo, and I am super excited to have a fellow blonde bombshell on the show today, Kimberly Anderson, who is an intuitive transformational coach. Welcome to the show, Kimberly.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Yay! And so we met because you reached out to me on Facebook and asked me to be a speaker at one of your virtual events that you were having. So I did my interview with you, and then we found out that we had a lot of commonalities. So I was like, girl, you got to get on the show here. So thank you so much for joining us.
Yes, absolutely. It's an amazing journey that we're both on.
Yes, for sure. So before we jump into all the good stuff, I always like to ask, what does it mean for you to be enough?
I would probably say knowing that I'm strong and that I can get through anything. When you look at it as there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and depending on what you're going through, no matter what, it's eventually going to stop or end, and you're going to get through it.
I absolutely love that. I do have to say that we were supposed to do this interview in person because you only live a few minutes, well, longer than a few minutes, but you live in Temecula. But I love that you just said that, because when we go through something, we know it's going to end. And the reason why we weren't together is because of my car accident, which I'm still dealing with. So definitely we're going to get together and hopefully do another episode together. But thank you for being flexible here.
Yeah, of course.
So let's just jump right into it because we don't have much time. On this show, we really talk about how we move from our struggles into our strength and how has it gotten us here today, and kind of the whole mantra of being enough. So share with us your journey, your story, and we'll go from there.
Okay.
I know, no pressure.
And to pinpoint, there are so many things. I went to summarize it, I in and out of domestic violence for 20 plus years, in and out of different relationships and dealing with it and all the different aspects of it. And it really opened to my eyes to everything that we go through, and that being a domestic violence survivor, and what I like to call and created an entire program around as being a thriver, is that it's not limited to anybody. It is literally everybody across the board. It doesn't matter who you are, what you do, what you look like, or anything. It can affect everybody. I remember being 20 years old and going into a domestic violence women's group, and I was the youngster there, and I was looking at these women that were of all ages and all races and economic backgrounds, and I was floored. I was completely floored because I had no idea that it reached so far and so wide and so deep.
Yeah, I think that was the biggest thing for me, was the recognition that I was in a narcissistic abusive relationship. And even as a mental health therapist, not recognizing that. But then when I started doing a lot of the research, obviously narcissistic abuse falls under the domestic violence arena, but just not knowing how prevalent that type of abuse is.
Right.
It was just like astounding to me. And being a therapist, like, it was even more astounding because I'm like, I should have known this. But yeah.
That's the thing though, is it creeps up in it. And I get questioned all the time with people that I've helped or that I work with. And they're always like, well, how come you stayed? Or how come you're in it? Or why do women and men, why don't they just leave? And it's not like the person, the abuser, is going to walk up and to go, hi, I'm an asshole and I'm going to abuse you later in life. It doesn't work out that way.
Right.
And they are charismatic and charming, and it's little things. Are there red flags? Always, absolutely. But we don't realize it, and we push them off to the back thinking otherwise. Like for me, I had gotten out of a long distance relationship, and I was 18 years old. And I met this person, I call him number one. And I met this person, and the fact that he was constantly calling my house phone back in the day, because pre-cell phone dates, and showing up at my work and doing all these different things, I was like, oh, wow, he really cares. He wants to see where I'm at, wants to know where I am and be with me. And that wasn't the case. That was the beginning steps. And had I known the red flags of control.
Yeah. And that is, I think that is something that's very difficult, because mine was the opposite. Mine was, my ex-husband didn't control me. He didn't want to know anything, right? Like he didn't care what I did. And the more that he pushed me away and didn't care, the more I became manic and was like, oh my gosh, I want you to care, right? Like because of abandonment issues and this and that, like all I wanted him to do was care about me and not control me, but you know, actually like show that he wanted to be a part of my life. And so I gave him access to everything, phone, email, everything. He never used it, but I wanted him to know that like, hey, this is yours. And what he did was he blocked me from everything, our computer, you know, social media. And, you know, that was the hardest part. Mm-hmm. And I think especially with this topic of domestic violence and narcissistic abuse, you had said it earlier, like, you know, he's very charismatic and things like that. Like people just love him. And that's how it was with my ex-husband. Share a little bit about your experience in whatever relationship with love bombing, because I know some of these phrases are not familiar to people, right? So like love bombing is like all of the gestures. Like, you know, my ex-husband would take me to amazing trips. We got married in Napa. We had a gorgeous house, all these vehicles. Everything was like, look what I have. And like, he basically was trying to win me over by what he had. And he would love bomb me and love bomb me. Do you have like a similar experience with that?
So that's an interesting point because it shows up in many forms. There's what you're just talking about. Me, I had the controlling, but at the same time, they still didn't want anything to do with me. So it was it just comes in so many different forms. Yeah. And I have seen that, and I've talked about that. And oftentimes that's in the honeymoon phase where for me, it was the honeymoon phase showed up as all of a sudden I had attention. What do you want? What do you want to do? Let's go do this. Let's go do that together. And that didn't last very long.
Yeah, definitely. And the next part of, you know, traumatic and abusive relationships is, so the idolize is part of like the narcissistic abuse cycle, but it's also part of the trauma cycle. So the idealize, which is the love bombing, the things that you were just talking about. Then it goes to the disregard, right? And the discard, like he's going to discard you. And that's like the gaslighting piece, right? Where they literally make you feel like you're going crazy, that like all of this is your fault. And that is, you know, I saw these signs, but I was so traumatized in those 5 years that like I didn't really resonate with what was happening. I felt like it was all my fault. And if I would have just done this, he would love me more. And that's the gaslighting and the discarding, right? Talk to me a little bit about that. Like if you had that experience and kind of how did you feel about yourself?
Well, it's this stripping away of your confidence in your who you think you are. You start to believe that you are the cause of all this. There was a point in my life where I actually started to believe that I deserved the abuse. And that's a really scary place to be. And having outside people not realize what's going on in your inside world, and you're putting on this mask and you're doing all these things. And even if you share with other people what's going on just to make sure you're not going crazy, they're like, really? You know, or maybe they've seen little glimpses of what has happened, but it's possibly going on in their own relationship, so they don't know any different either. It's like an epidemic, and it's really scary. I think a way to combat that is to really know that no matter what relationship you are in, that people telling you that you're not worthy, that you're ugly inside and out, they are calling you names and doing all these different things. It's abuse. It really is abuse, and it's not okay. And you're not going crazy. So if you find yourself in a situation like that, and it can be and start as, just the friendship portion of the relationship too. You don't have to claim married or in a solid relationship. It starts early. And if you're aware of it, that's when you can really start to protect yourself.
Right. But it's also, I think, much deeper is being aware of it, but also believing and having that self-confidence that you are enough and you aren't these things. Because my ex-husband never told me I wasn't good enough. I created that story in my head based on his actions and his behaviors. And it wasn't, I'm not good enough for my ex-husband. It was, I'm not good enough as a therapist, as a friend, as a daughter, right? Like I catastrophized it to affect every area of my life. And so I think that that's super important. And I also like to point out that exactly what you said, I think narcissistic abuse is one of those types that are not talked a lot about because you can't see it, right? I mean, narcissistic abuse also falls in with some physical abuse that does happen, but majority of it is because of the emotional damage that that person does to you, right? By like the words they say to you, the name calling, the blaming you, the discarding and then wanting you back and discarding you again and wanting you back. And, and I think that that's why it's so important to talk more about this, because I don't think people really understand because they don't see physical bruises.
Right. That's exactly it. And having the conversation, getting word out there that it's not just physical, it's that emotional, it's mental. There's so many different forms of abuse. There's even financial abuse where they control the money and they may or may not give you an allowance to go shopping.
Yep.
There's so many forms of it, and having the conversation to make people aware that it's outside of just the physical stuff. And I used to pray, and there was some physical here and there, but I used to hope that he would hit me so I could actually prove something was going on, because it was so horrendous, going to bed crying every night, going to bed feeling worthless, going to bed going, what the hell happened to my life? It's very traumatic.
Yeah, it is. Talk to us about kind of that turning point for you. Like for me, my turning point was I had this one last incident, and I had asked God to give me a sign if I was supposed to be with him or not, because his affair and the divorce wasn't enough for me to leave. And 24 hours later, God gave me this sign. I found out about another woman he had living in our home, which that's a whole nother story. But and so that was my pivotal moment where I said, enough is enough. I walked away, even though I had no confidence in myself and was completely broken. But that's kind of where I started writing my book and, developed the movement and all kinds of that stuff. What was that pivotal moment for you that led you into what you do now?
So it's kind of been a ongoing sentence. Really. It's been a journey because there's been different things that have significantly changed my pivot point. And with the three main relationships that I was in, and the ones that I call number one, number two, and number three. And with the number one, I just couldn't take the abuse anymore. And I wound up actually meeting number two. And it was kind of like one of those situations, the lesser of the evils. And number two came in all charming and happy and wonderful. And so for me, that was my relief. I was already on the lookout to how am I going to get out here? And that just presented itself. For number two, I remember having, I was just had a baby and my third child, and I was on my computer looking how I was going to find a job, how I was going to get out. I couldn't stand being there anymore. And then I found out I was pregnant, which was shocking because there's only one way to get pregnant, really, in a relationship, you know, more or less. And aside from the medical stuff, and that didn't happen, but very, very rarely. So I was floored. I was still nursing my brand new baby that I had and found out I was pregnant like 3 months late. And I was devastated because I was already looking how to get out. And so you put on this face of, okay, well, maybe because there's another baby, there's going to be, everything's going to change. It's going to be happy. And you start making excuses to stay in the relationship. And it just went back to, you know, being awful. And it took for me to find out he was cheating on me to leave, because I won't tolerate that. And so I was asking God for a sign. Do I stay? Do I leave? And sure enough, I find this out. And I was like, okay, I guess I'm living in my truck with 4 kids, but oh well, it was worth being better than staying where I was. And then with number 3, I was so tired of being in that situation, and I was never good enough. He was looking for this perfect Barbie doll that I was definitely not it. I was 75 pounds lighter than I am today, and I was still too fat for him. I wasn't pretty enough. I was literally on a 5-year diet trying to make him like me and want me. Wow. And I was pissed. I kept going to sleep, and I crying and just being miserable in my life. And I went to bed one night just very angry and crying. And I woke up the next morning and I was like, something felt different. I couldn't figure out what it was. I was like, is the air on? Is the heat on? Like the air felt different. And I was like smelling it. Like the air smells different. Like what's going on? I went outside. I was like, the sky's bluer. This is so weird. Am I forgetting something? Mm-hmm. So I went and started asking my kids, like, is there something going on today? Am I supposed to take you somewhere? Like I couldn't figure out what was going on and what was different. And I just started going about my day, and I realized it was me. I was different. I literally woke up completely in a different mind frame and had a different mindset. Like I wasn't going to take this crap anymore. We're done. I am moving on. It's all about me. And that, in that moment, started my journey of getting certified in absolutely everything I could think of, starting with yoga. That way I could help and heal myself, and then turn around and help and heal others. So that was probably my most significant point because of where it's led me today.
I love it.
Are those long?
And we never have enough, no, oh my gosh, no, this is your time, girl. We never have enough time on this show. So we only have a couple minutes left, but share with us what you do now as an intuitive transformational coach, and kind of what your mission is, your passion, and how people can get in contact with you.
Okay, so I work with people intuitively. I have a 90-day program that I've created about transformation and confidence. And sometimes I'll call it Unleash Your Inner Goddess, because I'm doing an entire series with that. And I have workshops and retreats. I also work with couples, doing couples retreats to help them really bring in their relationship and find all the yummy goody stuff to really make their relationship amazing. But my main focus is working with women to help them just unleash their inner goddess so they can live with purpose and passion.
I absolutely love that. You have such an amazing story. And I think the more vulnerable and authentic we are about what we've been through, the right people will come into our lives. And I truly 100% believe that. So how can, people get in contact with you? I'm so passionate about this, narcissistic abuse and that kind of stuff, obviously, because I've been a part of it, but really, obviously, the movement of being enough.
Mm-hmm.
And for anyone that's watching this show today, if you are struggling with an abusive relationship, or you're wondering if this is really what you're struggling with, narcissistic abuse can come from both men and women. Feel free to reach out to me or even Kimberly to just talk about what's going on with you so that you know that you're not alone and that you have support. That's so vitally important. So how can people get in contact with you, Kimberly?
So you can go to my website. It's KimberlyACoaching.com. It's constantly changing right now because it crashed, and so it's being rebuilt. So you never know what you're going to get when you jump on there. And then support@KimberlyACoaching.com is how you can reach me. And I even recently got certified to work with the domestic violence survivors, because one more thing I wanted to be able to add in there to help people. It's just, you can never learn enough and know enough, and I just want to be able to help.
Yeah. And as a therapist, that's kind of my primary focus too, is PTSD and trauma. So very cool. I love it. Congratulations. Thank you so much for all you're doing to help empower women and couples. What is your favorite? We got about 30 seconds. What is your favorite mantra or affirmation?
So I would say it is, I am strong and deserving of everything I want and desire.
Ooh, I love that. I am strong and deserving. Yes, you are. Thank you so much, Kimberly, for joining us today. And I always like to end the show with my favorite quote, which is, you are enough just as you are, regardless of whatever season you're in. And the more you celebrate and focus on that, the more you will live in your strength. Thank you so much for joining us today on the episode. And remember, you can check out the show on Roku and also download the Easy Way app on your phone. And be sure to visit my website, meganfenyo.com, to order your free cards and to get lots more good resources. Until next time, never forget, you are enough.